Hello, I'm going to be talking about our middle grade and young adult novels for the Carolrhoda list. And to start us off, I've got Zaina Lost and Found by debut author Shafaq Khan. It's a middle grade novel about a 12-year-old aspiring detective growing up in London in 1970. Her parents take her and her brother to visit family in Pakistan and promptly vanish upon being framed for a high-profile jewel heist. But they leave behind clues for Zaina and her brother and cousin to follow that will help them recover the stolen jewel and clear her parents' names if they can stay one step ahead of the other people who also want that jewel. So to follow these clues, they take the Hippie Trail, which was an informal bus and train route across the Middle East, from Pakistan to Afghanistan to Iran and finally to Turkey. And along the way, in between dodging pursuers and decoding puzzles, Zaina gains a greater understanding of her roots and becomes more comfortable with her dual cultural heritage. This is a delightful mystery and adventure story. It's very funny, it's a page turner, and it's got a lovely heart as well. It also weaves in some fascinating history. I had never heard of the Hippie Trail before I worked on this book, and it absolutely blew my mind. I think it goes to show that no place on this planet is static. There's a rich history everywhere, and what we think we know about a place or a culture or a person might only be scratching the surface. That's what Zaina finds out anyway. And her growth is handled so well. It's incorporated seamlessly into this fun and fast-paced caper plot. Shafaq is of Pakistani descent herself and grew up outside of Pakistan, so she brought a lot of her experience to this story and to creating a character who I think is pretty unforgettable. Switching tones. Displaced by Patrick Ocheng follows 14-year-old Kimathi during the toughest year of his life. He's grown up in a comfortable suburb in the Kenyan city of Eldoret, but post-election violence drives his family from their home, and they end up living in a camp for internally displaced persons, meaning they haven't left their home country, so they are not officially refugees, but they're in the same basic situation as refugees. Kim has to cope with everything that he's just experienced. His dad has been killed, his house has been burned down, his neighbors have turned on him. And at the same time, he has to deal with terrible living conditions, including how hard it is to get basic necessities. For instance, everyone in the camp has to pay outrageous prices for drinking water because the supply is controlled by a water cartel. But he also does make friends, and together they hatch a plan to get the camp a more reliable and affordable water supply. Patrick is a lawyer who has worked directly with internally displaced persons like Kim, and he brings that understanding to the story. This novel tackles a lot of heavy stuff, but it does so with sensitivity and with hopefulness, which you see in Kim's determination to hold on to his sense of humor and his ability to have fun and his care for other people. It's a quick read, it's an accessible one, and it's ultimately an uplifting one. We are doing a paperback edition of The Color is Sound by Emily Barth Eisler about a musical prodigy who goes on strike from playing music to find out what matters to her besides that. And our other paperback will be the final installment of The Adventures of the PSS 118 trilogy, Last Summer in Outer Space by Joshua Levy, in which our brave middle schoolers take on hostile aliens and rescue humanity one more time before high school. In our lab list for YA novels, The Writing Room by Marcia Argueta Mickelson is about 18-year-old Maya, whose wealthy father makes a big show of kicking all his children out of his home after high school graduation and making them fend for themselves, except for covering tuition at a college of his choice with a major of his choice. So this summer, Maya is crashing with some friends at their studio apartment, working a full-time job and trying to get some freelance writing gigs to make some extra money. She ends up finding a sense of focus at the Writing Room, a co-working space where she works on her writing projects. Bonus here is that her cute neighbor Jake also spends a lot of time at the Writing Room, and he's definitely got a bit of a Darcy vibe to him. And as she's settling into this new life, she comes to realize how sheltered she's been up to this point and how abusive her dad is. not just to his family, but in the way he moves through the wider world. So when she finds out he's using his money to back a hateful political campaign, she realizes she has to speak out, and she has to use everything she has learned from her summer at the writing room. There's a lot going on here. There's a really sweet romance. There are great meditations on what writing and literature mean to Maya. There's an exploration of Maya's sense of identity as the daughter of a white man and a Guatemalan immigrant. But what stands out the most to me is the theme of breaking away from someone who wants to control your life and breaking away from the assumptions you've made that limit you and how you interact with the world around you. This is a story about Maya opening herself up to new possibilities, new ways of looking at storytelling and relationships and her own family and her own life. It's a story that I think only Marcia could have written. It's not like anything else I've ever read. And finally, we have Wild Song by Candy Gourlay. This was originally published in the UK, and we are very lucky to be doing the North American edition. It's set in 1904 in the Philippines, which is controlled by the US at this time. 16-year-old Luki is chafing against the strict gender roles of her village and looking for a fresh start. She's a really good hunter, but everyone's telling her she has to get married and have babies instead. So she's like, how do I get out of here? And conveniently, the US authorities are looking for volunteers to go to the United States for the World's Fair. The idea is to showcase various indigenous cultures from around the world at the fair. So Luki joins a bunch of other Filipino volunteers, and they trek over the ocean and over a bunch of land to St. Louis, Missouri. When they get there, it's a mixed bag. The indigenous groups are basically put on display in mock villages and expected to perform their cultures for the fairgoers. There are various injustices happening to and around them, but there's also a wider world full of people and experiences Luki never would have encountered back home, and there are unexpected allies who help her through the toughest times. So Luki has to take it all in and figure out what she wants to do after the fair. This is based on real history. The girl on the cover image was one of the indigenous Filipinos who came over for the World's Fair. Her name was Tugmena. Candy is from the Philippines originally, and she tackles all this complex history beautifully in a way that makes you want to keep reading. You want to find out what happens to Luki and where she goes from here, and you just happen to be absorbing a lot of historical insights along the way. That is our novel list. Thanks very much. I hope you'll check it out.